I'm reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, chapter entitled, I Have Done My Part. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada then turned to Kirtanananda Swami. So, New Vrindavan is developing. Be happy. We can't be happy if you are not there, Kirtananda said. I am always there, said Srila Prabhupada. When I see that everything is going nicely, then I am happy. Even with this body, body is body, we'll have next body. Wasn't it Puru who gave his father his youth? Asked Kirtanananda. Srila Prabhupada nodded. King Yayati traded his old age. And you can do that, said Kirtananda. No, why, said Srila Prabhupada. You are my body, then you can do it. There is no difference. Just like I am working, so my Guru Maharaj is there, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Physically he may not be, but in every action we do. In the Bhagavatam, said Tamal Krishna, you say that for whoever follows the Guru The Guru lives with him eternally. So I am not going to die, said Prabhupada. Yeti yasya sajivati. One who does something substantial, he lives forever, he doesn't die. One has to accept another body according to his karma, but for a devotee there is no such thing. He always accepts a body for serving Krishna, so there is no problem. Srila Prabhupada ki. So some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples were actually suggesting that they could, like by some kind of mystic process, they could trade in their youth to enable Srila Prabhupada to live longer, because they'd read about that process in the Bhagavatam. But it's it was from another yuga, and it's not possible now. But anyway, Srila Prabhupada said that's not the process. The process is that you follow your guru, and in that way you're the guru's representative. So today we're reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 18, chapter entitled The Lord's Visit to Vrindavan, text 53, 54, and 55. So I'll read through the Sanskrit, I'll read through the Bengali and translations of the first two verses, and then we can read verse 55 together. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna
Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare
653. E Sabamukya Bhakta Laya Nija Sange Shri Gopala Darashan Kaila Bahurange. It was with great jubilation that Rupa Swami visited Lord Gopal, accompanied by all these devotees. Ekamasarai Gopal Gela Nijastane Shri Rupa Gosai Aila Shri Vrindavane. After staying at Mathura for 1 month, the Gopal deity returned to his own place, and Sri Goswami returned to Vrindavan. Text 55, please repeat. Prastave Kailun Gopala Kripara Akhyana Prastave Kailun Gopal Kripara Akhyan Prastave Kailan Gopal Kripara Akhyan Tabe Mahaprabhu Kela Sri Kamyavana Tabe Mahaprabhu Kela Sri Kamyavan Prastave Kailan Gopal Kripara Akhyan Tabe Mahaprabhu Gela Sri Kamyavan Prastave Kailun Gopal Kriparakyan Tabe Mahaprabhu Gela Shri Kamyavan Kailan Gopal Kriparakyan
Ashtaveka Hiram Gopal Kripara Akyan Kavi Mahaprabhu Gela Shri Kanyavan
Kashtave Kahilun Gopala Kriparakyan Tabe Mahaprabhu Gela Shri Kamyavan
Vaishnavis.
Prastave Kalun Gopal Kriparakyan Tabe Mahaprabhu Gela Sri Kamyavan Prastave Kalun Gopal Kriparakyan Tabe Mahaprabhu Gela Sri Kamyavan Prastave Kalun Gopal Kriparakyan Tabe Mahaprabhu Gela Sri Kamyavan
Prastave. In the course of the story, Kailun, I have stated, Gopala Kripara, of the mercy of Gopal, Akyan, description, Tabe, after this, Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kela, went, Sri Kamyavan, to Sri Kamyavan. Translation. In the course of this story, I have given a description of Lord Gopal's mercy. After seeing the Gopal deity, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Sri Kamyavan. Please repeat. In the course of this story, I have given a description of Lord Gopal's mercy. After seeing the Gopal deity, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Sri Kamyavan. Report by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Kamyavan is mentioned in the Adivaraha Purana. Chaturtam Kamyakavanam Vananam Vanamuttamam Tatra Gatva Naro Devi Mamaloke Mahiyate. Lord Shiva said, the best of all forests is the fourth of these, named Kamyaka. O Goddess Devi, anyone who goes there is eligible to enjoy the glories of my abode. In the Bhakti Ratnaka fifth wave, it is also said, E Kamyavane Krishna Lila Manohar, Karibe Darshanastan Kunda Bahuta, Kamyavane Yatatyeta Leka Nahita. In this Kamyavan, Krishna performed enchanting pastimes. Here you will be able to take darshan of many ponds and other transcendental spots. I cannot even describe in writing all the sacred theatres found at Kamyavan. Magyanatavrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Tam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakan Vitamscha Vangshakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today is the appearance day of Lord Balaram. And as we know, Lord Balaram spent much of his time with his beloved brother Krishna, herding the cows in the different forests of Raj. And Kamyavan was a favorite of Krishna and Balaram. Actually, it's actually the biggest of the forests, the biggest area. And because it was on the outskirts of Raj, it's actually in today's geography, half of Kamyavan is actually in Rajasthan and half is in Uttar Pradesh. And it's very expansive. There's actually the parikrama of Kamyavan is 14 miles, 20 kilometers. So it's quite a big area. And because it's it's the most remote of the forests in the sense of it's being the furthest away from the larger towns in Vraj, like Govardhan and Varshana and Mathura and Vrindavan. So it's like a very, very rural area. And so for that reason, it's the favorite place for Krishna and Balaram to take the cows, because there'll be no impediments to their leela with the cows, and they'll not be interrupted by too many grown-ups. And of course, there's unlimited pastime places for them to enjoy in. So Krishna and Balaram do come into descriptions of Kamyavan on a couple of occasions, but there's a lot of different pastimes here which I'm going to talk about. But even while these different pastimes are going on, we can meditate that while these pastimes are going on, Krishna and Balarama are like herding the cows through the different forests of Kamyavan. And so Kamyavan means the forest in which or by which one can satisfy one's desires, one's spiritual desires. And in one of the Puranas, it said that Kamyavan fulfills the innermost desire of the soul, and therefore we should pray to Kamyavan and to the deities in Kamyavan, who are going to, Govinda, especially Radha Govinda and Vrinda Devi. We should pray for pure devotional service, because if we pray for any other desire, then that desire will eventually bring only frustration. So Kamyavan is considered, has some special potency to fulfill our spiritual desires. It's the home of Vrinda Devi, and Vrinda Devi, of course, is very much instrumental in fulfilling our spiritual desires to be engaged in a particular role in Krishna's pastimes. So it's a very potent place. And another reason that it's very attractive to Krishna and Balaram is that it's, in some Shastra, it's described that within Kamyavan there are 12 sub-forests. Actually, in Indradyumna Maharaj, about a year ago, he gave 5 lectures on Kamyavan, which kind of lasted in total about 10 hours. So it gives you some idea how many pastimes there are. And he actually said that it's like an unfathomable ocean of knowledge in the Vedic culture. You know, that you think you've reached the outer, or you think you've reached the depths of your research, but then you just come to another piece of research that opens up another vast area that you hadn't previously touched upon. So, so these 12 forests. It's interesting. These 12 forests. You can see how each of the 12 subforests they kind of satisfy Krishna and Balarama's and Krishna and Radharani's desires for like particular, particular aspects of their pastimes to be enhanced. So the 12 subforests are Vihamyavana, which is the forest of desired sports. Ahutavan is the forest of desired speech. Krishna's Ditivan is the forest of Krishna's desires. Cheshkavan is the forest of desired practice. Swapnavan is the forest of desired dreams. Gahavan is the forest of desired dense caves. Shukavan is the forest of desired parrots. Kapotapakanvan is the forest of desired pigeons. We've got some really nice pigeons here now at Kurinbhavan, here in the temple, you know, like around the temple, the wood pigeons. And a lot of the nice cooing sounds are coming from the wood pigeons. And I've noticed in the last couple of years, there's more and more young wood pigeons seem to be like starting their own families here. For us, you know, going back about 20 years, they only seem to be about 2 nesting couples of wood pigeons, but now there's like 6 or 7, and the young ones are very attractive. Then there's Chakravan, which is the forest of desired chakras or discs. And then there's Sheshashaivan, which is the forest of desired Ananta Shesh beds. So Lord, this is one feature of Lord Balaram, that he expands to facilitate Krishna's comforts and desires in the form of Krishna's bed, Krishna's dhoti, Krishna's stick, and also in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he expands as the different instruments, the kartals and the harmonium, the conch shell. So again, in this way, Lord Balaram is all pervasive in all of Krishna's pastimes. So just as it's said that wherever Krishna, Srimati Radharani is always present, so similarly, wherever Krishna is performing his pastimes, Balaram is always present in some aspect of Krishna's paraphernalia. So that was number 10. Then there's subforest number 11 is Dolavan, which is the forest of desired swings. And finally, Shravanavan, the forest of beautiful sounds. I think there are other forests which have subforests as well. Felix probably knows better than me because he was listening to all of those lectures. Do all of the forests have subforests?
No, it's a lot of lakes in the forest.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, in Kamyavan, that's described there's 84 kunds and 84 temples, and there's also one temple which has 84 pillars. That's called the Chaurasi Kamba. And this temple of 84 pillars is actually one of Nanda Maharaj's 3 palaces in Vraj. So his kind of first palace is in Nandagram. His second palace is in Gokula, in Mahavan. And that palace also has 84 pillars. And each pillar is engraved with a different pastime. So very amazing temples. And it's described that particularly the one in Kamyavan, it's actually not a temple, it's more of an assembly house. Yeah, it's an assembly house. So Maharaj Nanda comes here with his brothers. Anyone know the name of Maharaj Nanda's brothers? Some of them anyway. Taksha. Yeah, Upananda. There's also Sunanda, Abhinanda, and Nandana. Those 5 brothers. And so Maharaj Nanda holds kind of, temple updates in this Chaurasi Kamba assembly house. And it's described that when the leaders of the Nanda Maharaj's, cowherd men are discussing important issues, then Krishna and Balarama sit on either side of Maharaj Nanda, even when they're very, very young. They like, Maharaj Nanda likes Krishna and Balarama to be there with him at that time. So even though it's a very, very peaceful place, it's the different demons, friends of Kamsa, and also other personalities who are inimical towards Krishna's devotees sometimes come to Kamyavan to disturb envious persons who can't tolerate seeing pious people enjoying natural beauty and a simple way of life. They come to try to disturb things. Actually, when the Pandavas went into exile, having lost the gambling match, the gambling match kind of, they were gambling for complete control of the entire kingdom, and whoever lost the gambling match would have to go into exile for 13 years. So the Pandavas, 5 Pandavas and Draupadi, when they were defeated in the gambling match, then the Kshatriyas, immediately adhered to the conditions of the match and went into exile. And they actually walked because they left behind all of their soldiers, they left behind their horses and all of their other kind of royal insignia, and they adopted just clothes of mendicants, and she wore deer skins. And they walked from Hastinapur. It's described they walked via Kurukshetra for some reason, and then they came south, and then they came to the Jamuna, crossed over the Jamuna to Mathura, and then walked to Kamyavan. And they stayed at Kamyavan was the first place they stayed. And actually they spent a large proportion of their exile in Kamyavan, the Pandavas. And they lived in thatched cottages. And it's described that they spent most of their time hearing and chanting Krishna's pastimes. That was their prominent activity. Various demons actually, tried to kill them and disturb them, and various rakshasas tried to eat them, but they were all defeated. Now Duryodhan, he wasn't satisfied that the Pandavas had lost all of their wealth and they were gone into exile. I assume that he heard that they were living a peaceful life, and he couldn't tolerate that they weren't suffering enough. So, so he actually came with all of his warriors and set up camp just very close to the thatched cottages of the Pandavas, just perhaps, like quarter of a mile away. And he engaged in loud parties every night for several days, and just with the intention of just disturbing the Pandavas. And when Indra observed this, he was so annoyed that he came with some of his generals and fought with Duryodhana and his chums and severely defeated them. And because Yudhishthira considered that Duryodhana was a close family member, a close cousin, and because Yudhishthira was Dharmaraj, and he felt it was his duty to protect Duryodhana. So he brought Arjuna and Bhima and Nakula and Sahadev to come to Duryodhana's aid, and he defeated Indra. They fought off Indra. So you can imagine how embarrassed Duryodhana was. He came with the intention of disturbing the Pandavas, but he went away completely humiliated. So he had to come up with an even more envious plan. So what he did was he convinced Vasi Muni to go and visit the Pandavas with his 60,000 disciples. And Duryodhana had kind of studied the activities of the Pandavas in Kamyavan, and he knew what time of day they had their meals and everything. And so he sent Vasi Muni along at a time when just after they'd had their meal, and just after the Pandavas had had their meal, which would mean that Draupadi wouldn't have enough time to cook another meal for Vasi Muni. So this was Duryodhana's intention, and that Vasi Muni would be very angry that he wasn't treated as a guest in the proper way, and he would curse the Pandavas. So what happened was, so Devasa arrived at the cottage of the Pandavas in his Draupadi, and said that he was expecting them to feed him and his 60,000 disciples, and that he was just going to the river or to the Kund to take a bath or to get clean before he came back for his meal. So Draupadi, she knew that actually she had some benediction, that she had some magical pot, that whatever was cooked in that pot could satisfy thousands of people. But she'd already exhausted the complete stock of food for that day. She'd already cooked for the Pandavas, and she didn't have time to go and collect any more food. So and she knew what was going to happen. She knew that Duvasa was going to curse them all. So she just became very emotional and upset, and she was praying to Krishna for help. So Krishna actually came. Krishna came personally, and Krishna said, I've heard that your cooking is very wonderful, and you've got a magic pot. And Draupadi said, but I've just cooked for my husbands, and there's nothing left. So Krishna took the pot. He said, I'm sure there must be something left in this pot. And he found a tiny, tiny morsel of cooked rice on the inside of the pot. So he ate that morsel of rice, and he said, wow, that's amazing. It's such a small morsel, but I feel completely satisfied. So because Krishna felt completely satisfied, then all other living entities at that moment were completely satisfied, including Devasa Muni and all of his disciples. So Devasa Muni knew that if he came back to Draupadi, he wouldn't be able to eat anything. And he felt that he would be the one that was committing an offense for not eating anything, so he just left. Anyway, he can't have gone too far away. Oh no, actually, no, Dasa often went to Kamyavan, because he found it a very, very peaceful place to meditate. And, I suppose because he had that very fiery nature, he's a partial expansion of Lord Shiva. So he's got it's just part of his nature that he's extremely fiery. So, but at the same time, he is a great devotee. So, so he was attracted to Kamyavan because it was such a peaceful place and a place where he could actually meditate on Krishna, on Krishna's pastimes. So on one particular day, then he was meditating on Krishna's previous incarnations, like in the previous day of Lord Brahma, and he was also meditating on the coming descent of Krishna. So he was deep in meditation. He was like in an ecstatic trance of like meditation on the Lord's pastimes. And it just so happened that nearby there was some young boys playing, and like the leader of the gang, he was like really actually my Guru Maharaj used this word cocksure. He was like really a cocky boy. He liked to show off to his friends, and he liked to do bad things, naughty things. Naughty is not the word. Worse than naughty. He liked to do like mischievous things. Yeah. So when he saw Devasa Muni there in meditation, he went over and he cut off half of Devasa Muni's top knot, and he took it to his friends and showed it to them. So then when Devasa Muni, this broke Devasa Muni's meditation, and he came over to the boys and he said, because you like creeping around, because you like to creep around, like creeping up on people and like doing bad things to them, you're now cursed to creep around for the next 4 yugas as a crocodile. And so this boy, he was like, he suddenly realized that his cocky nature wasn't really worth being a crocodile for 4 yugas. So he was like desperately, he became immediately humble. And he said, Babu, 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 please be merciful, please be merciful. And Duvasa said that actually at the end of these 4 yugas in Kali Yuga, you'll be freed of this curse by the power of Harinam Sankirtan. And you'll be liberated. So this boy became a crocodile for like Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yugas, and then he resided in a lake in Godrumadweep. Devasa. Anyway, I don't know who arranged that, but anyway, he was residing in a lake in Godrumadweep in Navadweep, which was quite close to the ISKCON Chandradoya Mandir, just on the other side of the Jalangi. And he was residing in this lake. And then Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were on Harinam Sankirtan, and they were like just by the side of this lake chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the crocodile was attracted to the sound of the Maha Mantra, and he kind of came out of the water. And Lord Nityananda was just there on the bank of the water, and like the crocodile like put his nose or whatever, the end of his snout on Lord Nityananda's feet, and then he actually was transformed into his spiritual form. So that would indicate that he was actually like some special personality when he met Devasa Muni in the first place, and so he regained a very like a celestial form, and then some residents of the spiritual world came and took him back to the spiritual world. How's the time? Okay, well, I have to get. One reason that, say Kamyavan, it means the place where we can fulfill our innermost spiritual desires. And every morning, at 5 o'clock, then we sing to Srimati Vrinda Devi, to Srimati Tulsi Devi, to fulfill our spiritual desires, to take up residence in Vrindavan. More Abhilas, Pilas Kunje Diovas, Nayane Haribo Sada, Yugala Ruparasi. Please fulfill my desire to reside in Vrindavan and to always be able to behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And so Srimati Vrinda Devi now resides in Kamyavan, and she resides here in Kurunabhavan. But she was the deity of Vrinda Devi was actually originally carved by Krishna's great grandson Vajranabh, along with 15 other deities. So after Krishna had left the planet, and after most of Krishna's associates had left the planet, then the area of Vrindavan and Mathura became very bleak in one sense. Krishna's great-grandson Vajranabh, he consulted Sandilya Muni and Sandilya Rishi, and he was advised to re-establish places of pastimes and to build temples and to build walkways and feet, to create pastime places, to create monuments or little kind of features which would enable people to go on parikrama, basically, in Braj. And specifically, he carved 16 deities and installed them in different parts of Raj. So that was including Radha Madana Mohan, Radha Govindaji, Radha Gopinathji, Shakshi Gopal, another one, Gopal on Govardhan Hill. And then there was 4 presiding deities of Raj, which were Haridev in Govardhan, Keshvaji in Mathura, Govindaji in Vrindavan, and Balaram in Mahavan. And then there were 4 goddesses, 4 goddesses who were carved, and that was Yogamaya, Manasi Devi in Govardhan, Patala Devi in Mathura, and Vrinda Devi in Vrindavan, initially in Vrindavan. And then over time, with the attacks of different marauding kings and warlords, then the deities were hidden and on many different occasions by the pujaris. And so as we know, as we heard recently, Rupa Goswami, he actually had a dream in which he understood that Govindaji was buried underground at the Yogapith in Vrindavan, and he excavated that place and brought out the deity of Govindaji. And then he also had another dream that Vrinda Devi was submerged in Brahmakund, and so he brought out Vrinda Devi and he built her a little temple next to Govindaji's temple. And then about 100 years later, when the Emperor Aurangzeb issued the Black Decree, in which he issued a decree that all Hindu temples and all Hindu schools throughout the whole country should be destroyed. Then his soldiers started marching on Vrindavan. But one of Aurangzeb's soldiers was actually a devotee, and he went quickly to Vrindavan and warned the pujaris that Aurangzeb's soldiers were coming. So they took Vrindadevi and Radha Govinda, Radha Madana Mohan, Radha Gopinath, and they initially took them to Radha Kund in Govardhan, and then to Kamyavan. And but then they were afraid that even in Kamyavan, then the soldiers would find them. So they put the deities on bullock carts, Radha Madana Mohan, Radha Govindaji, and Radha Gopinathji and Vrindadevi on bullock carts, and started for Rajasthan, started for Jaipur, because they knew that the Rajput kings, the descendants of Man Singh, would look after the deities in Jaipur. And so the three deities, Radha Krishna deities, they went to Jaipur, but Vrindadevi wouldn't be moved outside of Raj. And there's actually a prayer that Vrindadevi, it's a prayer written by or recorded by Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, in which Vrindadevi actually says that I can't leave Vrindavan. She says, Krishna comes to Vrindavan and goes from Vrindavan, but I'm the original queen of Vrindavan. And, even though I gave Vrindavan to Srimati Radharani, but if I leave Vrindavan, what's the meaning to Vrindavan? So she used her Shakti, and the bullocks couldn't budge her. So she's resided at Kamyavan since that time. And she resides in the complex of the temple of Radha Govindaji, because even though the three deities of Vrindavan, Radha Govindaji, Radha Madana Mohan, and Radha Gopinath, went to Rajasthan, because they had stayed in Kamyavan for some time, then the local devotees, they built small temples for these three deities and installed Pratibhu deities, which are considered to be non-different from the original deities. So right to this day, Vrindadevi is worshipped in the village of Kamyavan, at Vrindakund, the Radha Govinda temple. And as we know, as some of you know, then Mother Ratnaranjini, who was the wife of the temple president and who lived here from 1986 to 1994 when she left her body, then 96, was it 94 or 96? 94, yeah. So she actually was very attracted to Vrindadevi, and she encouraged the devotees to make donations so that this temple of Govindaji at Vrindakund could be restored and could be maintained in good condition. And because we developed that link with the pujaris there, and actually Dinabandhu Prabhu and Gaura Shakti Mataji, they've also got a very strong connection with that temple. So we heard the devotees here at Karuna Bhavan got word that that the deity who had been there for I don't know how many years, hundreds of years, I don't know, but that there was irreparable damage, and that a new deity was being carved to replace the old deity. This is a bona fide practice. It's mentioned in the in the Archana Padatis of the Pancharatrika Vidi, and it's bona fide that if a deity becomes worn by age or by some other damage, then a new deity can be carved, and there's like a process by which the pujaris ask Krishna to come, or Vrindadevi to come into the new deity. But when that new deity was carved, then there was some slight imperfection in the new deity, and and they, you know, and they felt that the local people wouldn't accept this slight imperfection. So they ordered another deity to be carved. But that deity that had a slight imperfection, then they I don't know whether we requested it or whether they suggested it, but she came to here to Karuna Bhavan, and that's the deity we have here of Vrinda Devi in her temple room. And that's so, you know, like the bullocks couldn't get her out of Kamyavan, but someone's desire, Mother Ratnaranjini's desire, or Vrinda Devi's desire to come here to Karuna Bhavan. So she's here now, and so in that sense, you know, Karuna Bhavan is intricately linked with Kamyavan and all of the pastimes that go on there. So actually, Raghunath asked me to try and say something about Krishna and Balarama. So when Krishna and Balaram and Subhadra heard that the Pandavas had been exiled by Duryodhana and that they'd adopted the dress of mendicants, wearing deer skins, living in the forest, and Krishna and Balaram and Subhadra came from Dwarka to visit them. And and when they arrived, you know, they felt very sad that the Pandavas had been treated in this way. But when they saw that the Pandavas were completely absorbed in Shravanam and Kirtan and you know, didn't seem very undisturbed, then and also that the Pandavas, especially Yudhishthira, who was the leader of them, that Yudhishthira felt that it was his duty to accept the conditions that had been agreed upon at the beginning of the gambling match, even though the Kurus cheated, but still Yudhishthira considered he had to uphold Dharma. And understanding that, then Krishna and Balaram realized that there's no way that the Pandavas are going to come back with us to Dwarka. You know, they're definitely just going to stay here for the entire duration of their exile. But Krishna promised that he would protect them unconditionally under all circumstances. And then Krishna and Balaram and Subhadra returned to Dwarka. Okay, so there's like thousands more pastimes. But yeah, so I'll stop there if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Shri Krishna Balaram ki.
Jai.
Shri Balaram Jayanti ki.
Jai.
Shri Kamyavan ki.
Jai.
Shrimati Vrinda Devi ki.
Jai.
Nitai Gaur Premanande. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnav.